Hello everybody, welcome to Weekly Tech. In this video, we will discuss about interview questions related with setTimeout. So before that, let me give you a quick brief about what is setTimeout. So setTimeout is a higher level asynchronous function in JavaScript. setTimeout will take a callback function and then a time in milliseconds as a second argument. So you should always follow this kind of signature to give your time, the expiration time of the timer. So this way, if someone reads your code, it will be easy for the developer who is reading your code to understand after how many seconds the timer will expire. So it looks more elegant. So let me give a function in the callback, and this function will simply print sing. Okay, so I want this code to be run after exactly 3 seconds, and let's see the output. There you are. After 3 seconds, the code gets executed. Simple. Now let's come to the very famous problem related with setTimeout that was asked in Google. So this is a very simple code snippet in which we have a setTimeout function that is printing the value of I, and the value of I is coming from a for loop. So isn't it a very simple code snippet? We have a setTimeout inside a for loop, and that for loop is running 3 times, and every time for every iteration we are printing the value of I, still after 1 second. So what do you think? What will be the output? So the first guess will be 1 2 3, but let's see the output. 3 got printed 3 times. Surprisingly, yes, no 1 2 3 will get 3 in the output for all the 3 timers that got set by the 3 iterations of for loop. So what's the reason why it happened? So before that, we must know that var is limited to only function scope. By this I mean var can have a global scope and can have a function scope. Let's define a function first. Let print loop, and inside that I'll create another block which will have 2 variables. Let foo equal to the value, and another one will be var vaz equal to vaz, and I will print the value of both foo and baz outside the scope, outside this parenthesis. Okay, so what do you think? What will the value of foo and baz? So this is where the conceptual understanding of both var and let comes into picture. So there you are. You'll get foo is not defined, and if we console baz before foo, you'll get the correct output for baz, but foo is not defined because let is blocked scope. You cannot use the variables defined by let outside the block, but instead you can do that with baz. Or if you print baz outside the function, and I will comment foo out, so see, baz is not defined at line number 17. So this won't work because var can at most be function scoped. Okay, so in this case we have defined baz inside the print loop function, so its scope is only limited to print loop. I can access baz, the variable which is defined by var, inside the print loop function anywhere inside any block, but let is only accessible inside these 2 parentheses because let is block scoped, and that is what happening here in the case of for. So most of us will think, okay, var is function scoped, and in the end when the set timeout is done, as it is asynchronous, it will point to a value of I, and I will be 3 at that time, so all the 3 set timeouts will be pointing to a same I location, same I address, and all of them are holding 3. so that's why it's giving me an output of 3. But this is not completely true, and many of you will be thinking that the value of I is not changing and it is all the time 3 and 3, that's why in the end it is giving 3 for every set timeout. But this is also not true. Let me console it immediately after setting out the timer, and let's see the output. So 0, 1 and 2 and 3 times 3, so that means the value of I is changing. And I want to clear a very big misconception related with every iteration of the for loop or the loops. Most of us think that for every iteration all the scopes are same. I mean, all this iteration shares a common scope. No, that is not true. So every iteration of a for loop is a different scope. And to prove this, or let's just use our previous function print loop, and I will recreate the for loop for you inside this. So I will simply use the baz variable and I will assign 0 to it. Then I will call setTimeout, and inside setTimeout I will console the value of baz, the same way we are doing inside the loop after 1 second. And let me have 3 block. I need to increase it to 1 and 2, and now let's see the value 2, 2 and 2, and this console is also printing 2. Where keyword is function scoped is only limited to function scoping. In the end, when the timer expires, it uses the last value set by the last scope, that is 2. But if we convert where with let, so what do you think, what will be the output of this console here? Let's see. Baz is not defined at line number 27. Why? Because let is block scope and you cannot access let outside the block. But here you can see we got the correct output 0, 1 and 2, because let is again, as I said, block scope. Every scope has its own baz variable which the set timeout is trying to access, and that's why we are getting the correct output 0, 1 and 2. So the answer to this problem can be, we can simply convert where to let and it will work, isn't it? And yes, it's working. So let me comment out the call of this print loop and run it again. 0, 1 and 2. Fantastic. So this is the solution. Okay, this is the correct solution of this problem. But let me recreate the same problem with using let. So for that, let me define let globally and give it a value of 0, and I can simply access the I here inside the loop. So what do you think, what will be the output now? We have seen that let has its own block scope. So in this case, this should also work. It should also give us 0, 1 and 2. What will be the output here? 3. Again, this is the issue. What is happening here? Let's try to understand the same thing with this function. So here I am not declaring a new variable for every scope. Instead, I have defined a global variable baz equal to 0, and inside every scope I am simply using the value and increasing it by 1, and that's how we can recreate it. So every set timeout will give you, I need to call the function, so every set timeout will give you 2, 2, 2 and 2, because in this case let is function scoped and we are accessing the variable which is function scope. So all of the set timeout will use the same variable, that is function scoped. So that's why in the end, when the timer expires, the value is already 2, and that's why all the timers gave us 2 in the output. But as we have seen, let is block scope, so we can have a let inside this block also. This is totally legal, and this will give you the correct output 0, 1 and 2. And this console log at line number 29 gave you 0 because let is block scope, and this block is completely different to this block. Okay, and the same we can do here, that I equal to 0. Let me comment out this call and let's see the output. 0, 1 and 2. Fantastic, isn't it? And I know what you are thinking, that we have defined I here also and inside the for loop also, and why didn't it give us a compilation error? Because again, as we have seen and discussed, that every iteration of for loop is a different scope. And to prove this even more, let me have a C code. Okay, I have created a C code for you. So I have created a variable I here and assigned a value of 42 to it. And I have a for loop here which is running from 0 till 5, and I'm simply printing the value inside the loop. And I have the same variable at line number 19. So what do you think, what will the output here? A compilation error, because we have the same variable here and here inside the loop also? No, we got the correct output: 0, 1, 2 and 3 and 4, and in this case line number 19 printed 42. So the same is happening in our code with JavaScript. So this let is having a completely different scope when we compare it with the let defined inside this parenthesis. So I know what you guys are thinking right now. So can we define a variable inside for loop and it won't give us an error? Yes, it won't. If you define an int j equal to 0 and you run it, and even you can print the value, it won't give you an error. Okay, so let me have a j equal to 10, and then you will have 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 42 in the end. Indeed. So let me give you a challenge. And the challenge is, if I define a variable inside the for loop like this, and inside the set timeout, if I do a pre-increment of val and will print the value, so what do you think, what will be the output? I'm adding the pre-incremented value of val with I. So as we discussed, let is block scoped and every iteration of for loop is a different scope. So what will be the output here? 11, 12 and 13. But if I change this val to let to var, then as we know var is limited to function scoping. So what will be the output here now? 11, 13 and 15. Please let me know in the comment section that how it worked and what's your understanding behind it. And to recreate this in a function, so what we are doing here, let's recreate it in the print loop. So we are having a var variable which is equal to 10, and for every scope we are having this variable, and inside baz we are adding by a pre-incremented value of val. So in our first scope, val is 10, we incremented it by 11 and we added into baz. As baz is block scoped because we are using let here, so 0 plus 11 will be 11, and now the value of val is 11. So now the baz is 1, let baz is 1 and the val is 11. Now we pre-incremented it by 1, so 11 will be 12 and 12 plus 1 will be 13. And now the value baz is 2, let is block scope, and the val was 12, we incremented it by 13 and 13 plus 2 will be 15. So the output of this function will be the same as this loop: 11, 13 and 15, and that's what exactly happening inside the loop. Now let's take it even more further. What if I change the I from let to var? What will be the output now? We have seen that all the set timeouts, all the three set timeouts are accessing the last value, that is the value 3, but val is incrementing every time. So the first time 3 plus 11 would be 14, then 3 plus 12 will be 15, then 3 plus 13 will be 16. So the value will be 14, 15 and 16. Isn't it amazing? If it is confusing, then let me know in the comment section. We'll discuss more over there. So this is with this typical and weird interview question that was asked in Google. Now let's come to the next and the last interview question that most of the interviewers asked, and even I asked most of the times. That is, we have a simple object here, details, and inside that I have a property named first name and a function named checkTimer. And if I call checkTimer like this, I'll get an output of Uday, because we have seen in a previous video that this will take the object from which it is called. We are calling the checkTimer by using the details object, and that this keyword will point to the details object. But what if I pass the same object or the same function to the setTimeout function? setTimeout needs a callback function because it's a higher order function. So what if I pass this function to setTimeout? What do you think? What will the output here? Undefined. Why? Because in case of setTimeout and in case of higher order function, that this value gets changed, and especially in case of setTimeout, the this keyword will point to the window object. And to prove this, let me log the this keyword here, and the this keyword is the window object. So how to do it? We have seen it in our previous videos that we can use call, apply and bind methods to bind or to change the this keyword of a particular function. So here in case of setTimeout, we need to pass the function as a callback, so we cannot use call and apply. We need to use bind here, so we can do dot bind, and bind will take the this argument, that is nothing but our object. So in this case we'll get the correct output, like this will have the object and Uday. So this is a special case in setTimeout. Even though we are doing details or checkTimer, that we are calling the checkTimer function by using the details object, and as per our understanding, this should point to the object from which we are calling it, but it is not happening in the case of setTimeout. So by default it will point out to the window object, but in case if we want to bind it to a particular object, we need to use the bind method. So that's all folks. Please let me know in the comment section about your suggestion, and if you don't like anything in the video, please let me know, and if you like it, please let me know. Please do like, share and subscribe. It gives me a lot of confidence. Please guys, it takes really a great amount of time, and I need to do a lot of hard work to prepare this kind of videos for you. Please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.